Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our July edition of our SEAL Healthy Longevity webinar series. My name is Jocelyn Protopappas, and I am the Manager of Special Projects at SDSU's SEAL. And I'm very excited today to talk about one of my favorite topics, gifts. Now, I know that sounds a little silly, but today's topic our webinar is titled The Gift of Preparation, Easing the Aging Journey for Your Loved Ones. The first image that pops into my head when I think about gifts are all the razzle-dazzle, shiny boxes and gift bags, and a jolly old man in a red suede suit who comes into our house in December. But I can also think about some of the best gifts I've ever gotten in my life. And I can also think about some of the gifts that make you scratch your head and say, it's the thought that counts. Earlier today, I was talking with one of my graduate student assistants about today's webinar topic. We were talking about advanced care directives and death doulas and artificial nutrition, all very light topics to talk about on a Thursday afternoon. But the conclusion we came to when we were talking about this and when we talk about these matters is truly that it's the thought that counts. When family members and loved ones have to make difficult decisions, having your voice and your guidance when making those decisions can help to ease the burden. Ease and thoughtfulness truly are gifts in times of extreme stress. So that's the gift I'm really excited that we're going to be talking about today. Let me introduce our special guest today. Today we have Jonathan Schwartz joining us. Jonathan holds a master's degree in gerontology from the University of Southern California and brings over 2 decades of experience in supporting older adults and their families. As the founder of Partner in Aging, Jonathan has become a trusted advocate for navigating the complex journey of aging. His work spans caregiver coordination, senior living placement, hospital advocacy, and long-term care planning. Sounds like we all need a Jonathan in our life. He has come to be known for his compassion, insight, and innovative thinking. He is deeply committed to helping people age with dignity, independence, and peace of mind. So please help me welcome Jonathan.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. From North Carolina, and there's a familiar name, Jesse. Hi, Jesse. Jocelyn and the whole SEAL team, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today on a topic that is so personal to me. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen and go into the PowerPoint. So again, my name is Jonathan Schwartz, and today I'm going to be talking about the gift of preparation, easing the aging journey for our loved ones. My company, I have just one little plug right here in the upper corner, is called Partner in Aging. And I am a local based San Diego company here that helps seniors, as Jocelyn mentioned, with aging. The topic of planning is so important and welcome, and why this matters. All right, so so today we're going to be talking about, again, planning and why and how to plan for aging, as well as how Partner in Aging possibly could help you and your family. So why plan? Aging is inevitable. We're all doing it. Even my newborn daughter, who's now 3 months. Chaos, though, as we age, does not have to be inevitable. The reason to plan is to avoid crisis in decision making. We all make poor decisions when we're in a crisis mode. There's no question about that. But by planning ahead, we can avoid making those bad decisions in a crisis moment. I've seen this time and time again over my 20 plus years of working with families of older adults. No doubt that when we plan, it reduces conflict among siblings and other family members. Planning preserves dignity and independence, because if you don't plan, someone else is going to be making those decisions for you, and they may not be your preferred decision. Planning protects families' financial well-being. Crises tend to be expensive. Aging, it can be expensive, but if we plan for this, we reduce the chance of a major crisis happening. So what does preparation mean? There's a bunch of different aspects that we'll get into today. There's emotional preparation, there's legal and financial, medical, and personal health. We can prepare for our own health. There's some logistical, of course, and then we will also want to plan for our legacy. So I'll start this off a bit more negative. Certainly, we kick the can down the road in planning for aging. These are uncomfortable conversations. I've been doing this work. I sit down in someone's living room and we talk about all aspects of aging, all the different topics I just mentioned in the previous slide, the legacy, logistical, medical, legal, emotional. And I'm good at this. This is what I've been doing. I know this field so well. My parents are now in their 70s. And I thought, we have not had this talk. My sister and myself have not had the talk with my parents about what their aging wishes are. And I have no problem, there's no challenge of doing this with other families when I'm a neutral third party. But to initiate that conversation, even with my parents, people I love the most, is really hard. How moderating that conversation with my parents was a big challenge. So I understand why people avoid these planning conversations. They can be uncomfortable. However, there is a cost to avoiding these conversations. I've seen this too many times that families end up in a crisis mode. There's no question. And I know you have probably seen something similar. Medical decisions are rushed and made by strangers if we avoid these conversations. There's financial strains and unexpected care costs. People assume that Medicare covers a lot of situations that happen. And without understanding what Medicare does and does not cover is something that is significantly important. Emotional toll on family caregivers and siblings that can come into conflict. See this all the time with siblings. We don't assign roles. Our parents or between the families don't assign roles. Hey, maybe one sibling takes over healthcare decisions, another takes over financial care. But then often one sibling always feels like they're doing more for their aging parents. But to have those conversations, to clearly state who is doing what and who's responsible for what and who, that often alleviates a lot of the conflict. And I think Benjamin Franklin said this, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. So some common fears that I've seen that families have is there's a fear of loss or independence, dignity, and control. Certainly with aging, this is one of the greatest concerns that people have. But by planning, there's no doubt we retain that independence, we retain that dignity and that self-control, which is what everyone wants. We worry about being a burden on our loved ones. I'm a parent now of 3 kids. The last thing that I want is for them to worry about my wife and I significantly. By having these conversations early, none of us want to be a burden on our kids. But by not having those conversations, we no doubt become one. I'm in the process right now of writing a little book on how not to be a burden on your kids, like maybe your parents were on you. A lot of these pre-planning calls that I get are from someone maybe that's 50 or 60 years old, who maybe just lost a parent, who realizes, oh my gosh, navigating this maze of aging is so difficult. It's eye-opening to see how expensive and complicated and bureaucratic aging can be. We better come up with a plan for myself because I don't want my kids to have to go through what I just did for my mom or dad. Some common fears are anxiety about finances, housing stability. Everyone wants to age in place at home. What does that look like though? Is it physically possible to climb up the stairs? Is it financially possible if you need a lot of caregiving? And so often, I'd say a good 75% of the calls that we get are a bit more in that crisis moment. And the kids and their families often look like this man. So here's 5 conversations that I think that every family has to have. One is around health. What are yours and your loved one's wishes if becoming seriously ill? There's documents like advanced care directives and a pulsed form, which I'm happy after the end of the presentation to talk more about. But everyone has to have their wishes laid out and that their kids need to know. It cannot be, well, I think mom, I think dad would like this X, Y, or Z. Have it clearly spelled out on what your healthcare wishes would be. Finances. Who can access bank accounts and make decisions if necessary? I cannot tell you how many times over the past 20 years a loved one does not relinquish or share financial information with their adult kids. And then an emergency happens and they become incapacitated. And then accessing that financial account becomes so much more complicated. Talk about finances and get names of your loved ones on accounts if necessary. Housing, can they safely age in place? So this was a conversation, like I mentioned, we just had with my parents. What do they want? If they need a lot of care at home, do they want to move to a retirement community? Do they want to downsize to, let's say, a 55 plus home? Or do they want to hire in full-time care to their house? What are these plans? And it's interesting because sometimes married couples don't always agree. And so that's another thing in my own situation, we are trying to navigate. So a support team, I go around and ask people all the time, if an emergency happened, who would you call? And often that person, I encourage you, everyone on the call today, to think about who is on your support team. Who would you call in case of an emergency to help? And often a lot of those people that are on one support team are also seniors or much older people in general as well. So I encourage people to have a diverse group of support team, not only adult children, but younger and older neighbors, friends, other family members that they can have. You can never have too much support. And think about values. There's a little off topic, but one thing that we often ask older adults is, tell us about your history. I think that's fine. It's interesting. It's important. But one thing that I know is so critical for anyone at any age is to still have something to look forward to still have dreams, hopes, and aspirations. And so when we're having these conversations, whether it's yourself or with your family, ask your loved ones, what is it that they still want to do? What brings them joy and meaning and peace in their life? So getting down into one of the line items, which is legal and financial. I spoke about an advanced healthcare directive. You got to have that to spell out what your medical care preferences and wishes are. Sometimes people fill out these healthcare directives decades prior, and they maybe forgot what they put down. So I encourage you to constantly think about and review that with your physician and your family. Power of attorney. I can't tell you how many people I speak to don't have anyone assigned to them as their power of attorney. And there's two different aspects of this. There's a healthcare power of attorney, and then there's a financial power of attorney. You can have one person do both. Often I see one child carry out the healthcare responsibilities, maybe because they have a medical background, and another carry out the financial. You can have the same person, as I mentioned. Or you can hire, if you don't have anyone that you feel comfortable, you can hire someone called a fiduciary to oversee that power of attorney. Trust and a will, which guides inheritance and prevents legal messes. We were helping an adult daughter sell a house, sell her mother's house. Her mother passed away, and the daughter had no idea that the mother forgot to put the house in her trust. These trusts in the estate planning is a little complicated. So the daughter just assumed that her mother had everything all in place. And when it came down to selling the house was not in trust. So the daughter, who was the trustee, could not sell it until thousands and thousands of dollars of legal fees plus time until a judge said that the house was, in fact, should be in the trust. And so to constantly update and review, if you need any referrals on who to go to, who to speak to, it'd be my pleasure to help. Long-term care planning. So there's several aspects of this, right? You have long-term care insurance that you could discuss. Only 5 to 10% of Americans actually have that insurance. So long-term care planning financially around, what does it cost to age at home? What does assisted living cost? And that's a lot of the conversations that we have around current costs of aging in that regard. So if you have any questions on what that looks like, I'll be happy to address. And then what does insurance cover? Medicare, Medi-Cal here in California, or Medicaid nationwide. Understand what's covered and what is not. As I mentioned earlier, people have a misconception of how much Medicare, Medicaid, Medi-Cal actually covers, and are quite disappointed when they find out in-home care is not covered, nor is assisted living. Medical readiness. So I encourage everyone to keep a health file, your current medications, your health conditions, who your physicians are, and insurance cards. Have that handy in case of an emergency, and make sure that whoever your healthcare power of attorney knows where that is. I think it is incredibly important to have an advocate if you're hospitalized. I don't know how many of you have been hospitalized or know someone that's been hospitalized over the past, let's say, year. But without an advocate helping in the hospital to communicate to the staff or even physicians, mistakes happen. These hospitals today, it's a challenge. There just does not seem to be enough physicians, nurses, or social supports to properly advocate and care for every one of these patients. And unfortunately, older adults tend to be looked over in the hospital without an advocate. So one quick plug is we can help you if you're local here in San Diego and you don't have anyone that you trust to advocate for you in the hospital. Please feel free to, at the end of the presentation, ask a question about our hospital advocacy program. Housing transitions. So I think housing is a critical piece. AARP did a study several years ago, and it showed almost 90% of people 65 and up wish to age in place at home. But only a fraction of those people who wish to age in place at home physically can. I get asked all the time, when is it time for me to consider moving? What does that look like? And so here's a couple red flags I always identify is, have a bunch of falls happen in the house? Do you feel lonely? Are you having a hard time caring for your basic needs like hygiene? Is there any memory issues? Is the house becoming just too difficult to manage? Those are a couple red flags. If yes is the answer to some of these, to consider maybe a smaller home or even a retirement community. I encourage everyone to explore options and explore them early. There's some incredible home modifications that can be made, and there's some incredible contractors out there that specialize in aging in place. And if you want any recommendations, I'm here for that. With elevators and grab bars and you name it, you basically can modify your home but there's certainly a cost to that. I'm a big advocate of retirement communities or these smaller board and care homes for people, because often individuals become prisoners in their own home. If they're no longer driving, it's really hard to stay socially connected. And that's one of the greatest values of these retirement communities is you have people around you at all time. And so I encourage people to explore those options early. A lot of these retirement communities now have wait lists. And so people will say, oh, I'm not ready to even take a look. But we never know when that incident happens, when that major fall or diagnosis happens. And it's important to know just all the available options that exist for if that does happen and you need to make a quick move, you'll know where to go. I don't know how many of you saw, I'll speak on that secondly. And of course, if you're working with your loved ones on this is a really tough decision. Our house is our identity. Maybe we've lived in our home for truly decades. And so like I did with my parents, I tried pretty hard to approach that with some empathy. I don't know if you saw the Netflix show with Ted Danson recently, where he was in a retirement community, but the photo here is from that show. And if you haven't seen it, I thought it was really well done. Caregiver planning. So if I ask this question all the time to audiences and to people, if you needed care, because one day, according to Rosalind Carter, we're all going to need some type of caregiving, who are you going to call? And often finding a caregiver is a lot more complicated and difficult than I think a lot of individuals think. It is so difficult to find a high quality caregiver, especially if it's not one of your family members. Today, 1 in 5 Americans that are employed are saying that they are also missing time from work because they're caring for their aging parent. And so 20% of our country, and I anticipate that number only to increase with time as we have more and more aging, our population is rapidly growing older. At the same time, there are fewer and fewer adult kids to care for their aging parents. Today's 80 or 90-year-old had on average almost 3 kids, where today's 60 or 70-year-old has on average about 2 kids. And so in the decades to come, when those 60 and 70-year-olds need more care support, they're going to have one fewer child to provide that. Fortunately, I've got 3 kids. I've got a son and then 2 daughters. It tends to be the daughters that are providing those caregiving. I'm planning on giving my daughters everything. I don't say no to them. So that's my investment. Who's providing care now, though? We help people find caregivers if it's not a family member, which often family members can do part of the care. But if one needs a lot, who's going to fill in those gaps? As we talked about, consider paid caregivers versus unpaid caregivers. Did you know, though, that often family caregivers, they still can become paid by government municipalities for caring for their aging loved ones? So feel free to shoot me a question after that, and I'll help you find the right resource. No doubt, caregiving burnout is real. I talk to adult kids all the time who are caring for their aging loved one, whether it's physically or emotionally caring. And it's not easy. And to have a team of support around that, I think, is just so critical. And so if you have kids, and encourage them to work with their siblings and their friends and other family members to provide that care for you if you ever need it. So what does a good plan look like? Key legal documents are completed and accessible. I have people that have completed their trust, but they have no idea where it was. They maybe completed it 40 years ago, haven't looked at it since. Keeping those legal documents updated. It's so critical that the family understands the plan and their roles. I talk to families all the time, and I think I'm in charge of the health care for my mom if she ever needs it, or I think I have financial control, but I have no idea what the passwords to the bank accounts are, or who to go to if needed. Make sure your family, your friends, whoever is your power of attorney, understand what their roles actually are. Make sure you have emergency protocols in place. Please have in your home somewhere, if you're not living in a retirement community, an emergency contact list. Who to call if a first responder were to come, who they should call. I encourage people to have emergency response pendants as well in case of a fall does happen. Those Apple iWatches are just incredible. They have that built in. If you need any advice on other emergency response pendants like the Help I Fall I Can't Get Up, there's some really sleek designs today that don't scream, what it did 30, 40 years ago, what they look like. And make sure that the care aligns with your values or your loved one's values. If you're helping your parents make a plan, or you're helping your spouse make a plan, really try and get their input on that, because that is so critical. I put in here personal health because I think you're more likely to be a user of the healthcare system. And by the way, this man right here actually is 100 years old. It's incredible. But the poorer our health, and granted, we don't have total control of our health, but we have some control of our health. The poorer our health, the more likely we are to have some type of health event or crises or stress and financial strain, whatever that looks like. When we stay healthy, people ask me all the time, what's my advice for older people? And I say, especially in today's world, you got to stay healthy. And today, I think we have access to greater information on how to do so, greater health technology. These GLP-1 drugs, and I'm not an investor or advocate for them, but they could change the world in so many ways by giving people health for a longer period of time. But what can we do personally above and beyond some of the legal planning and emotional planning, all that I spoke about earlier, what can we do for our personal health? And I'm fascinated by the concept of the blue zones, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Netflix did a series on that, and an author from the National Geographic studied these 5 different areas around the world where people are living longer and healthier than ever before. And I always try and go back to these in my own personal life. And certainly I refer to my friends and family. This is, I think, probably a great way to live. Granted, it's not going to guarantee we look like this man at 100, but I think this can't hurt. And so number one would be to move and to move naturally. What these people who lived in these blue zones tended to do was they don't belong to gyms. They moved throughout the day naturally. One area was in Italy where there's a very hilly neighborhood. And these folks would just walk up and down the hill. They're farmers. So they tended to be outside all day, walking around the farm. So keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Number 2 is to have purpose. These cultures of long living, healthy people tended to have a lot of purpose at any age in life. One of the hotspots was in Japan, or is in Japan, Okinawa. And they have a word for this, and they say ikigai, which means for the reason we wake up each day. And I often think about this as a young person. It's a bit easier to find purpose to our day, right? We have to go to school, then go to work. This morning, I'm waking up to my newborn's cry. But when the kids are out of the house and maybe we're retired, what is that purpose that we have each day? And so I encourage everyone I work with to keep thinking of what their purpose is. What is it they still want to do? Why are they here? There is a purpose to aging. I think that purpose personally is to give back to future generations, to be a mentor. Number 3 is to downshift, is to learn how to relax, whether that's through yoga or talking, breathing, whatever that is for you to relax is so important. That's what the longest lived people know how to do. Number 4 is that 80% rule. What does that mean? It's eat until we are 80% full. Our portion size in the developed world in America is just far too big. It's more calories than we need to be healthy. So these cultures tend to eat just a little bit less. And when they do eat, they eat mostly plants and plant-based proteins. This is something I love. I'm pretty good at it. Is number 6 is to drink wine. I think possibly the benefits of the wine are the social benefits, drinking with other people, as well as it helps relax a little bit. There's a lot of conflicting data around wine, and it's probably not good for us, but in moderation, plus the deep red polyphenol wine that some of these cultures drink probably have some health benefits to it. Number 7 is to belong. And what that means is belonging to some faith organization, doesn't matter which religion, believing in something that's, bigger than any person is, tends to be very protective for our health. People that believe, that belong to a faith, tend to live 10 years longer than non-believers. It's incredible. Number 8 is loved ones first, is to prioritize the people that matter most in our life. This is why it tends to be older adults tend to be happier as we age. It's something we don't think about a lot, is as we get older, our world shrinks down a little bit. We prioritize our friends and the things that we love most throughout the day. So don't take your loved ones for granted. And number 9 is the right tribe. And it's probably a better way of saying that hang out with people that share these other positive attitude and eating well and exercise and all the above. Because if you're around other people that share in your similar health goals and traits, then you're more likely to do the same thing. So I think this list is fascinating, and I encourage myself to keep getting better at all these different attributes. So when you need help, You certainly can call us. There's a bunch of other aging consultants here to guide in planning and decision making. Even if you have adult kids who are in the financial world, in the medical world, in the legal world, whatever that is, like I mentioned, I do this all day long, and I had a hard time moderating the discussion with my family. I know exactly what to ask and what to say, and it becomes difficult when it's your own family. I encourage everyone to bring in a third party person or multiple experts to be a part of this planning process. So feel free to let me know if you'd like for me to sit in on a living room discussion with you and your family to help guide that plan. Certainly part of the plan is caregivers, whether it's paid or unpaid, for that in-home support. Like I mentioned earlier, it's hard to find those caregivers, but certainly by planning ahead, knowing who to call is critical. I can speak to San Diego County, there are 100+ retirement communities here in San Diego County. And it's daunting to think about, oh my gosh, where would I live? I don't have time to look at all 100+ places. And they keep popping up with each passing year, more and more. Happy to myself, plus there's many other senior living experts that could give advice on that. So feel free to let me know if you want to start just planning of what exists and at what price and what location. I mentioned about the hospital advocacy. One of the biggest fears that people have is, oh my gosh, going to the hospital and not having anyone for them to support. We have started this hospital advocacy program. So we are onboarding people who are still living in their own house for a very low cost every month. People can join our membership. And if they were to get hospitalized, we will be at the hospital within 12 hours to provide that support for them. This is great for someone who maybe their kids live out of the area. Maybe they are the caregiver for their spouse who has dementia or some other disease who couldn't advocate for them. Many of our members also, they have kids in the area. They have a healthy spouse that could advocate, but they just don't know how to do it. A lot of times people don't know who to speak to in the hospital or what to say, what one's Medicare rights are. And so that's why this program is so great, is you'll get a hospital advocacy member gets a professional social worker that knows exactly how to best advocate to help someone get to the right nursing home if they need to, and then land safely back at home. Part of the planning is downsizing. I think many people who live in their own home, especially for decades, I'm guilty of this too. We have too much stuff. Part of the planning process is what to get rid of. Part of aging safely at home is downsizing or decluttering. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions around that, or you'd like for me to connect you to any resources. I'd be happy to do so. And that's it. Here's my contact information, and I'll leave this on the screen for a minute, but I would love to be able to answer any questions or thoughts here.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was a boatload of information. I told you guys this was going to be a real gift today. We did have a question come in the chat. We may need a bit of clarification, but one of our guests today asked, how do you find a caregiver? And I'm hoping you can speak to that. It sounds like maybe Mitsuo, are you looking for are you thinking paid caregiver? Well, I guess they can't really answer. Maybe Jonathan, you can provide some insight there.
Yeah. So good question. There's two ways to go about hiring a caregiver, right? You might want to use your family, and that's a separate story. But if you want to hire a caregiver, there's really two ways to go about it. Number one is to go through a home care agency. That's a company that helps people find caregivers. Those caregivers who work for agencies, the agency employs that caregiver. Usually the cost, when you go through that route, the senior client who needs care pays the agency directly. The home care agency has workers' compensation and payroll services all in place. The challenge, one of the challenges is it's expensive. The client is paying a premium for that agency and the work that they're doing to onboard. The other challenge is that, and I can speak only to San Diego County, but I do believe that this is consistent nationwide. the best caregivers tend to work for themselves. And so the complaint that I've received, that I've heard over the many years, is that caregivers who work for agencies, not all, this is a generality, it tends to be very hit or miss. And so the other option to hire a caregiver is to hire a private individual that has caregiving experience. And so I am more than happy if one is looking for a caregiver, certainly here in San Diego, whether it's through an agency or private, to make recommendations there, and how to set yourself up if you want to hire a private caregiver, what you need to do in order to safeguard yourself and your family.
Thank you, Jonathan. I had a couple questions that I thought of, and I've been kind of on my mind. Um, Earlier, when I said I was talking with our graduate student assistant, we were talking about different times that it's important to kind of circle back to things like your advanced directive or your care plans, those kind of things. I was wondering if you could speak to that. When do you think it's important for people to go back and look at those critical documents?
So I think it's part of the spring cleaning. I think that's what they say. And so I would look at it every year. Don't wait for some event to happen. Review it with your family, truly, every single year. Things change, our opinions change, medical technology changes. I have in my advanced care healthcare directive, my grandfather had Alzheimer's disease. I'm 40 years old, so hopefully this isn't an issue. But I have in my healthcare advanced directive, if I get Alzheimer's, I don't want my wife to help me get antibiotics or any other life-saving treatment. That's what I personally want. However, who knows what the advancements in technology will be in 10 years, 20 years, 40 years. We all hope, and I'm very optimistic about that. So keep reviewing, because your opinions change based on new information.
Yeah, one thing we had talked about is that it's, yeah, spring cleaning would be great, but I think that's get could definitely be hard. But what we were talking about today was like there's some really critical pieces, including like a new diagnosis or a shift in your health. Like you said, one of the recommendations was every decade, but I think that is, of course, too long. But I think the thinking there is your opinion about what life looks like at 20, 30, 40, 50, and life-saving measures probably change as you age. Um, Another question I had was, I used to work at a skilled nursing facility, and a lot of times we'd go over people's pulse and talk to them about what things like artificial nutrition really means and what it actually means to get something like CPR. When you've been working with older adults and their caregivers, are there any aspects of like legal documents or medical documents that come up as big surprises or things that people are like really shocked about or didn't really have any idea was a part of the process, I guess? It's a complicated question.
I may not answer your question directly. I think that the biggest emotional trauma is over a loved one's healthcare wishes and it being non-congruent with their kids and
Mm,
what their hopes are, whether it's full treatment versus not, and one wanting
mm.
one. Religion plays a big factor into that. Maybe one's parents are more religious and their kids are not. I think the hardest thing is when you're not in alignment with your loved one on that, is to come to peace somehow with that is their decision, and to really try and honor that decision. Jocelyn, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm answering the
You
question
did.
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think I phrased it in a strange way, but I think I think you answered it, Jonathan. That's great. We have a couple other questions here in the chat. Someone asked if you'd be willing to share a copy of your slides.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And somebody, Nadine from IHSS said, if you have Medi-Cal, you are eligible for in-home supports and services. Are you able to speak a little bit to what IHSS is for those who may
Yeah.
not know?
Yeah. In-home supportive services is a Medi-Cal and I believe Medicaid benefit. And so the state, the county, if you have Medi-Cal and one needs care, the county will assess that person for how much care they're entitled to. In-home supportive services is a free benefit to those people, again, on Medi-Cal, that will bring a caregiver to their house. It's usually not enough. It's some hours, not enough. In my experience, sometimes it works out beautifully where the person that needs care on Medi-Cal gets in-home supportive services, and it works out really well. Other times it takes a while to find a caregiver or to find a consistent caregiver. And if you are on Medi-Cal and entitled to in-home supportive service hours, your family could become a paid caregiver. The family member needs to register with the county to become a caregiver, and then they get paid for those hours. It's a wonderful system that a lot of families don't know about. And so again, if anyone's on this call or anyone in the future is listening, I'm happy to direct them, at least here in San Diego County, on how to register.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think that will any final notes, Jonathan, to kind of bring us home, or any final points before we wrap up today?
Yeah, well, again, thank you for having me. I think the plan is really hard. It's a hard conversation to have. It is so critical. And even if you just share one thing, I spent a lot today about, financial planning, estate planning, others, just to have one check one of those boxes off, it makes the next conversation that much easier.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for joining us today. And thank you, everybody at home who has joined us today as well. I want to invite all of you to our SEAL website, where we have all of our upcoming webinars. And within, I bet, the next 2 days, we'll have Jonathan's on here. He did go through a lot of great information, so you can rewind and pause and take notes and everything you may need to. Our next webinar is going to be by Amanda Berry on August 7th. It is going to be talking about behavioral health care, behavioral health access for older adults. And we have quite a few other exciting webinars planned for September, October, and November. So check out that SEAL website. Join us back here again. And until next month, thank you all for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.